Hey everyone, welcome to Princess of Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with the Rescuers. This is a donation reward for Sweet Venom, and I know a few things about this. I know that it's about mice. That it's I think about I want to say it's about a mother trying to rescue her kid or something like that. I think, and I know that this movie is kind of infamous for having a like frame or two basically that shows a naked woman in it, and we're not going to worry about trying to find that in it, but it's like there's a frame or two where there's like this TV in the background in like the window of a building or something, and it shows a picture of a naked woman on it. It's like literally you probably won't even notice it because it's like a frame or two, but it's there. So that's interesting, I guess. Um, but it's become pretty famous for that. But yeah, I don't know too much else about this. I know that there's a sequel called The Rescuers Down Under. I assume that means Australia. But I don't know where this actually takes place. Does it take place in America at all? Or is it somewhere else? It could be anywhere. I don't know. Um, I grew up around like people who knew this movie but never actually watched myself. I was watching stuff at the time like An American Tail, those movies. Those were my mouse movies growing up. An American Tail, 50 Goes West, you know, those were my mouse movies. Like I didn't even watch The Great Mouse Detective until a long time later. I think I actually Did I react to that? I think I might have. Whether on this channel or the old one, either way. But yeah, so I don't know all the details about that. I've seen the character designs. I think there's a seagull as one of the characters as well. So I know what they look like vaguely. But yeah, I'm going into this mostly blind. So it's going to be interesting to see what this is about, to see what this is truly like. Um, and yeah, I guess we'll see. I don't know what else to say in these pre-thoughts because I don't know what else to say about this. I don't know anything. I don't know who's in it too. Like I don't know if I'll recognize any of the cast. There are some of these older movies that have notable cast members. Also, the dog might start barking because someone's trying to come to our door. But we'll just get into this. So, when the screen fades back, pause the redirect and go to the description below. Follow to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and play. Because after it fades black, then fades back in. Everything that went will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode, or to the movie. So that means that thank you so much for tuning in, and wait, how was I doing this? And I'll see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I looked up reviews of this movie, and it did really well. This movie like was really well received, and at the time basically was considered by some to be signaling in the start of a new golden age for Disney animation. And there are some who say like, wow, it's not necessarily as good as some of the classics Disney put out that came before it. It's still just has that spirit to it that really captures what we want to see for this kind of stuff. And I would say that's a pretty strong way to put it. The thing is, with a lot of animated movies from this time, a lot of Disney's works from this time, there's obviously a lot of things that just don't age well from portrayals of other people groups and certain aspects that just don't carry over into modern day. It's a very common thing with a lot of these older movies. Ava Gabor, who played Miss Bianca in this, was also Duchess in the Aristocats, and we all know how the Aristocats handled Asian representation. Not very well. So it's not a huge surprise to see that some of the Rescue Society members from around the world were not exactly the best in terms of representation. Um, there were stereotypes in there for sure. Um, but nonetheless, at the time, and even I guess more nowadays too, this movie is still well received. And like I said, my view on it is basically that it may not be as good as other Disney movies, and definitely doesn't hold up to a lot of the standards of today. But it's got this charm, this wit, and just this general fun side to it that just makes it enjoyable enough to watch. I know I didn't say a lot during the reaction just because there's not a lot to actively comment on. It's a very simple movie, and it goes with its plot and just goes straight into it. There's really not much of any deviance from that, but there's not really a lot of time to. It's like an hour and 17 minutes long. So it doesn't really have a lot of time to really do much of anything else. The sequel did come out in 1990, so that might take a lot more into account with that. But that's all speculation for now. I was wondering while watching also. I don't remember if it actually said or not, but I was wondering what nationality was Miss Bianca. Like, unlike Bernard, who was the janitor initially, Miss Bianca was a representative. She was an agent of the Rescue Aid Society. So I was wondering what nationality, because it seems like they're like a United Nations kind of thing. Um, and I think it took place at the United Nations actually at the beginning. But it seems like each of the agents was from a different country. And so I was wondering, and so when looking it up, I found out she was the Hungarian representative, which was derived from that of Ava Gabor herself, which makes sense. Also, Bernard's discomfort with flying is also derived from the voice actor Bob Newhart. He also dislikes flying, so that's a fun little thing that they put into this movie, having traits of the voice actors carry over to their characters. I think that's fun. Um, and speaking of the characters, like Bernard and Miss Bianca were exceptionally likable. Their romance felt a little. I'm not. It's not even that it was quick or anything, or out of nowhere, because it was definitely going to happen. It's more along the lines of it. It feels like it wasn't actually set up. It just kind of occurred. It didn't feel like there was a lot of time put into them like growing to like each other. It's just she sees some value in him, chooses him as her partner, and then somewhere along the way it's very clear they're falling in love with each other. It's just like there's not a lot of depth to their relationship growing. It's just more like they spend time together, they fall in love. And honestly, sometimes that's nice to see, where there's not a lot of depth to it. There's not any real troubles or issues. It's just simple. Just a simple love story. And it's not even about that, mind you, but it's a nice thing to see in it nonetheless. Miss Bianca is definitely the MVP of this movie, outside of maybe Penny. Um, Miss Bianca is just, she's brave, she's smart, she's determined, but she's also kind and soft spoken and encouraging. Like, she never like puts down Bernard for his fears, for his concerns. She never looks down on him or treats him meanly, or even it never even goes into a point where, like, you've seen in other movies where it's like, oh, like pick yourself up by your bootstraps or some stupid bullshit like that, or like get up your nerve. Come on, we got to do this. Like, she never even raises her voice at him. She's always encouraging and kind and lovely and just wonderful. And I wonder if that has anything to do with Ava Gabor herself. Like, I don't know a lot of what else she's been in. I know she was Duchess in Aristocats, and I would say she was pretty much like that in that movie, from what I remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but from what I remember, I believe Duchess was like that. Um, and yeah, I think she was just absolutely lovely. She was so kind, and it's very clear, like, she was like this kind of very fancy, girly girl type character with her perfume and her dress and everything, but she never came across as like conceited or self-centered or anything either. It's just like she's like just absolutely lovely, just entirely lovely. And Bernard is a sweet little anxious being. He's a good boy. He was doing everything he could to help, but he had his nerves. He had his fears here and there, and that's perfectly reasonable. He was still doing what he had to do to help, and he genuinely wanted to save Penny. And Penny, by the way, I have to talk about Penny. She was so sassy. I loved her sass, and I loved when she was imitating Medusa. Like, oh my gosh, that was hilarious. That was really funny and charming. Medusa herself was a pretty standard, basic villain. Not a lot to her. She's after a diamond and is using Penny. She kidnapped and is using Penny because of her small size. That's literally it. And she has this kind of henchman of sorts named Mr. Snoops, who's just kind of there. He's just your kind of stereotypical henchman who's kind of getting sick of her and by the end betrays her. We've seen this shit before. I mean, maybe back in the early 70s when this came out, this was a little fresher or at least somewhat more interesting in that regard, but nowadays it's like we've seen that to death and it's nothing special. And I'm not saying it was poorly done. It was well executed enough, but again, we've seen those archetypes before. Honestly, Carol Burnett did better as that archetype in Annie, as the orphan, the woman running the orphanage. I can't remember her name right now. I just remember her as Carol Burnett. Tim Curry was also in that, which is really fun. Um, but yeah, and then you had other characters who were just kind of there, like Orville with the albatross and everything. It's like he was just there. Like, he wasn't even that entertaining or fun. It's like he was just there. And apparently the actor was 80 years old when the movie was completed, which is interesting. And this was, I guess, his last public performance. There was the cat Rufus, who was a nice cat who really cared for Penny and everything and helped her out in the past and all. Um, you had the Gators, who honestly had less personality than the crocodile and Peter Pan. They were just there. Evan Rood was a good boy, though. We like Evan Rood. You have the other inhabitants of the swamp and everything, and including the one dude who was getting drunk off his ass on what I assume is probably moonshine. Let me see if I can find his character here. Oh, they were muskrats, by the way. Yeah, I see it here. Ellie Mae and Luke. Luke is the guy I was thinking of. it just says very strong homemade liquor here. It doesn't say what it was supposed to be. But I'm thinking probably something like a moonshine, like a really strong moonshine or something, maybe a whiskey. That's typically what is gone for in terms of like this kind of archetype character. Um, and so at the end there, I also have a question about Evan Root, by the way. So is he part of the Rescue Society now, or at least acts as a partner for Miss Bianca and Bernard? Is he going to be in the sequel? Because it's like all he does is buzz. It's not like like anybody can play him. And I believe Bob Newhart and Ava Gabor do return for the sequel, even though it's like 13 years after this movie, because it's in 1990 and this was 77. So it's like 13-year difference, and it's like the VA still return and everything. So that's fun. Um, and also, according to this, because of the Rescuers Down Under, this was the first Disney movie that had a sequel, and that's pretty interesting too. Um, but yeah, this movie did really well. It did really well, and I thought it was good. It wasn't the best movie I've seen, animated or otherwise. Even for its time, like I've seen movies older than this by a couple decades that were better, like 12 Angry Men, my favorite movie of all time. So, um, it wasn't bad though. It was what it needed to be. It was what it needed to be, and I think that's all it should be. The sequel might be longer. It might have more to it. I don't know. Maybe it'll cover some more things, but we don't need to worry about that right now. We can worry about that when we get to that. But for now, yeah, I did very much enjoy this. But I want to hear your thoughts. So tell me in the comments below, what did you think of The Rescuers? And for now, I'm Connie and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.